This hearing is on international wildlife trafficking, threats to conservation, threats to security, and I would just start with the observation that we have a major slaughter going on across the African subcontinent. If we had looked at the numbers a few years ago, we would have found that between 1990 and 2005, South Africa lost 14 rhinos killed a year. Friends, last year there were 1,000 slaughtered in South Africa. It gives you a sense of the magnitude of what is happening to the white rhino, the black rhino. If we look at elephants, last year, back in 2011, 17,000 elephants killed in sub-Saharan Africa illegally. Now we go to the following year, 30,000 killed in 1 year. How can this be? How can this new battlefield in this fight end up in such an absolute slaughter, threatening the extinction of some of these species? There is a battlefield there, and part of it is with organized crime. And part of it is that organized crime have tools that poachers in the past did not have. And increasingly, rebel groups, and especially terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab, are carrying into the fight a new type of weaponry that these animals have not been up against in the past. And the battle where this is being carried out is on South Africa's national parks. Some years ago, some of us worked to set up a national park system, the Congo Basin Forest Partnership Act. Well, now those parks across Africa are the battlefield in which these species are being slaughtered. So, as one witness will tell the committee, we are at a pivotal moment in the conservation movement with an alarming, unprecedented, dramatic increase in the slaughter of wildlife. Driving that slaughter, of course, is the value, and I talked a little bit here about what happened to the black rhino. The value of rhino horn right now is $60,000 per kilo. Now, that's more than platinum, that's more than cocaine, so you can see why these criminal syndicates are part of the chain. You can have terrorists or poachers or some of these rebel groups that do the work on the ground, but they pass it off to a criminal syndicate that then moves it to market. If you looked at the cost of ivory, tusk, $1,000 per kilogram. So that makes trafficking among the most lucrative criminal activities worldwide right now, generating $8 to $10 billion per year. And that cash flow allows today's poacher to buy something he hasn't had in the past. He's got at his disposal helicopters, high-powered weapons, night vision goggles. And then you take into account the intelligence community and what they're briefing us on. And they're saying that traffickers' use of sophisticated networks is now part of the program to move these products, and that this is not just a threat to wildlife anymore. Increasingly, they say, you have terrorist and rebel groups capitalizing on this trade, and that that's a threat to national security. One example, Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Somalia. They've turned to the ivory trade for funding. Joseph Kony and his Lord's Resistance Army, when we talked a little bit in the past in these hearings about exploiting child soldiers, well, they're exploiting the region's most unique and limited natural resource to fund its brutal violence as well as exploiting children. In response to this crisis, I authored legislation last Congress to expand the State Department's rewards program to target transnational criminal syndicates. That has been done. The first issue, the first example of this is the Pablo Escobar of wildlife trafficking. Vice Kasovang has been caught. His #2 man was caught in South Africa and just got 40 years. ivory and rhino horn were among what was being shipped out of the country. In order to take a comprehensive look at this problem, the President established an interagency task force. As a starting point, the group developed and published the National Strategy for Combating Wildlife Trafficking. And we're going to assess that today. We're going to look forward to hearing that report. And uniquely, the task force also sought advice from an advisory council of outside experts. And this included David Barron of the International Conservation Caucus Foundation. David has worked with Congress for years on these critical issues. There are many others, including Africans, whose views must be heard on this subject. And as this strategy was being developed, several of us urged the administration to act boldly, to utilize the tools, the law enforcement tools right now that we currently use to dismantle other illicit transnational networks. I know of no reason why we can't make the same argument. And one thing is clear to me: whether dealing with global terrorist networks such as Hezbollah, or international arms dealers such as Victor Bout, or even tackling North Korea's illicit activities, when the U.S. government is focused, when the government is directed, it can deliver devastating blows to our enemies. We have seen that. We have seen them put people like Victor Bout behind bars. What's needed here is exactly that approach. And what we want to do is encourage the administration to do precisely that. And I'm sure our NGO groups want to see the same follow-through. So future generations will judge our response to this crisis. If we want a world still blessed with these magnificent species, we need creative action. We need very aggressive action. We need to work with source and transit and demand to confront the challenge. And as Director Ash will testify, the criminals have raised their game. We now must do the same. And I'll now turn to the ranking member for her opening comment, Karen Bass from Los Angeles.